Okay then. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Pepe Crochets. Hello everyone, this is Pepe Crochets. Welcome back to my channel. Once again on my bedroom floor. Today we're going to be learning how to crochet this very comfortable and cozy chunky cardigan slash sweater. This is actually my first attempt at making a chunky sweater slash cardigan pattern, and I really love the way it turned out. This was inspired by Valentine's Day, as you can see by the little heart and the roses on my sleeve. And because we're using a bulky weight yarn, this sweater is actually really easy and quick to build up. So it should only take a couple of hours. It took me over the weekend. I think it's a very easy and fairly quick project, and it looks great, and I feel like this style is flattering on all body types, so I'm really excited to share this pattern with you. We're going to be creating 2 front panels and creating this sort of V neckline, a rectangle for the back, and then 2 sleeves. So once again, it's very easy. I used a half double crochet slip stitch type of ribbing, so it's very plush and it also stretches out a little bit. Then we're going to be decorating the sweater with some scallops along the entire edge. I've also tried wearing this backwards, so with the back side to the front and the V shape in the back, and it actually worked out and looks fairly nice. So I would say that you could wear this sweater both front side and back side. If you want a sort of backless type of sweater with the front giving a sort of boat neckline, I think it looks really nice. And as always, I want to thank everyone for supporting my channel. If you like my tutorials, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future crochet patterns and videos. Let's get started with the tutorial. Before we begin, we're going to need a few measurements. We're going to start with the front panel. So you're going to measure from the base of your neck and then around 2 inches past your shoulder. For me, that was around 7 inches. Now you're going to measure from the top of your shoulder to your desired cardigan length. I did around 15 inches. And then measure around your chest circumference. So wrap the tape measure behind your back over the highest point of your chest. That was 31 inches. For the back panel, we're using the same measurement as the second measurement, because we're going to be creating a rectangle, so I'm using that 15 inches again. And then to figure out how long we need to make the back panel, I'm multiplying that first measurement or that front panel measurement by 2 and subtracting it from the chest circumference measurement. I got around 17 inches, so I know that my back panel needs to be 17 inches for this cardigan to fit. Since this is measurement based, you can use any size hook and yarn. For today's project, I'm using a weight 6 super bulky yarn. This is the Hometown yarn by Lionbrand, and it is a 100% acrylic yarn in the color Dillion Quartz. I'm also going to be grabbing my 8mm hook. We're going to begin crocheting the right side front panel. To do this, we're going to start with foundation half double crochet stitches to that second measurement we took. So for me, that was around 15 inches. That's from the top of your shoulder to your desired length. You also want to throw a few more stitches in there, maybe about an inch, because as we start doing the ribbing, this is going to shrink down a little bit or condense down. So I believe I did around 16 inches in order to get that 15 inches in length. I'll link a video on how to do these chainless foundation stitches above. Now we're going to chain 2 and turn our work, and into this very first stitch, the stitch holding the chain, we're going to place 1 half double crochet. We're going to begin each row by placing 1 half double crochet. And then into the following stitches, we're going to be doing back loop only, so working only into those back loops and doing a half double crochet slip stitch. So you're going to yarn over, place your hook through the back loop, and pull up a loop. And instead of finishing the half double crochet like you normally would, you're going to slip stitch or pull that yarn through the remaining 2 loops on your hook. So here I'm going to show you one more time. You're going to yarn over, go into that back loop, pull up a loop, don't finish the half double crochet, and just pull that yarn through those 2 loops on your hook. And you're going to do this all the way down this row. When we get to the end, here is my final half double crochet slip stitch. I'm not going into that turning chain, I'm just stopping at that last stitch. And this is what it should look like. Now we're going to chain up 2 and turn our work. Once again, we're beginning by placing a half double crochet through both loops into that very first stitch. And then you're going to back loop, half double crochet, slip stitch all the way down the row. And this is the pattern you're going to keep repeating until you reach that first measurement, so from around the base of your neck to 2 inches past your shoulder. For me, that was around 7 inches. You also want to make sure that when you finish that final row, when you get to your measurement, you end on the same side that the tail yarn is sticking out of, or the bottom of the panel. This is going to make sense later, but basically the ribbing has a specific pattern, so it has this little V-shaped pattern as you can see here, either facing up or down, and I wanted everything to be facing upward, and this matters when we start doing our decreases. So as you can see here, I ended right at the bottom of the panel, and you can see that the little V stitches for the ribbing is facing upward or going upward. They kind of look like little hearts. Now I'm marking off where I want my decreases for the V-neck portion to begin. I chose around halfway down my panel. However, if you want more coverage, I would go around 3/4 instead of just halfway. So I placed a stitch marker at the halfway point, and I'm continuing the row until I reach that stitch marker. Once I've reached the stitch marker, I'm going to chain up 2, turn my work, and to do a decrease at the beginning of this row, I'm going to be going into the second stitch. So previously we were going into the first stitch, but now I'm going to be going into the second stitch and then doing my half double crochet there. From here, we're just going to finish the row as we normally would with those back loop, half double crochet, slip stitches. And then you're going to chain 2 and go back down, and when you reach that decrease point again, you're going to do your final stitch, chain 2, turn your work, and then when you start that new row, we're going to do one more decrease by going into the second stitch and skipping that very first stitch. And then you're just going to do those back loop only half double crochet slip stitches to the end. I only did 2 decreases because this brought me to around the middle of my body, or the midline of my body, where I want the 2 panels to join. Now you're going to make another front panel without the decrease portion, because we need to make sure that when we do the decreases for this side, that the ribbing is facing the right way. So as you can see, I have my other panel and I want the ribbing to be facing upward, so those little heart shapes are facing upward. So in order to do that, I need to chain 1 and cut off the yarn where I left off, because if I kept going that way and doing the decreases, it would be the wrong side. Essentially now we're working on the left side panel. So to begin the decrease rows on the other panel, we're going to start working into the backs of those foundation half double crochet stitches we made in the first row. So we're working on the first row, not the last row that we left off on. You're going to pull a slip knot through that corner stitch and then chain up 2. Now into the very first stitch, we're going to place a half double crochet through both loops of that stitch, not into the back loop only, but both loops. And then we're doing our back loop only half double crochet slip stitches. Make sure that you're going just into those back loops. These stitches might be a little harder to see. You want to keep going until you reach your decrease point. For me, that was around halfway down my panel, so I want to make sure it's just like the other side. Once I reach that halfway point, I'm going to stop, chain up 2, and then we're going to begin the row with the decrease by skipping that very first stitch and doing a half double crochet into the second stitch. Make sure you go through both loops. Now we're going to keep going down by doing those back loop only half double crochet stitches. At the end of the row, chain 2, turn, and for our final decrease, we're going to be doing this a little bit differently. You're going to stop 2 stitches before that decrease point, and you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop through that second to last stitch, and without finishing, go into the back loop of the final stitch and pull up a loop, and then finish by slip stitching through all the loops in your hook. So essentially, we're half double crochet slip stitching 2 stitches together. When you chain 2 and turn your work, now you're going to just do a normal row without decreasing. So half double crochet into that very first stitch and finish up this row by doing those back loop only half double crochet stitches. And that leads me to the same length as the other panel. So both panels should now mirror one another. So as you can see, this is the left side panel that I just finished. The ribbing is facing upward. And then here is the right side panel that we made in the beginning. The ribbing is facing up. To start the back panel, we're going to do half double crochet foundation stitches. You want the same amount of stitches that you did when you were beginning the front panel. So for me, that was around 16 inches. I wanted 15 inches and I knew that the ribbing was going to shrink that down. you can just go back to that front panel and count up how many stitches you had in that first row and do the same amount of stitches for the back panel. When you finish the foundation row, you're going to chain up 2, turn your work, and into the very first stitch we're placing a half double crochet through both loops, and then going down the row by doing those back loop only half double crochet slip stitches like we were doing before. Now we're just making a rectangle, so you're going to keep repeating these rows back and forth until you reach that third measurement that we took. So remember, when you add those 2 front panels up and you subtract it from your chest circumference measurement, this is how long the back panel needs to be in order for this cardigan to fit. Now we're ready to work on the sleeve. So for the cuff portion we have a tighter ribbing, and then we have the body portion, which is that same half double crochet slip stitch. To figure out how long you want your sleeve to be, you can measure from around 2 inches past your shoulder down to maybe around where your wrist is, and so that will tell you how long you want the half double crochet portion to be. I made mine around 22 inches long, and then for the cuff portion I did around 10 stitches. We're going to begin this sleeve by doing foundation half double crochet stitches to our desired sleeve length. Once again, don't forget that the ribbing will cause this to shrink down a bit, so if I wanted 22 inches, I did around 23 inches when I was measuring my foundation row. So we're just doing the same foundation half double crochet stitches to that length. So to do the cuff row, you can determine around how many stitches or how long you want the cuff to be. I did around 10 stitches. And we're doing single crochet foundation stitches now instead of the half double crochet foundation stitches. You're going to place your hook through both loops in that back stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the top loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops on your hook for the foundation single crochet stitch. And then again, I did 10 of these foundation single crochet stitches, which was my desired cuff length. So this is around how many I had. I used a stitch marker to mark off where I began my first foundation single crochet stitch, so I know where to begin the half double crochet. We're now going to chain 1 and turn our work, and into that very first stitch we're placing a single crochet. For the next 9 stitches, or up until I reach that stitch marker, I'm going to be doing back loop only slip stitches, so placing my hook through the back loop and then pulling the yarn all the way through for slip stitch. Here I'm doing my final stitch, and then I'm placing my stitch marker right back, so when I come back around I know where to start my regular slip stitches instead of the half double crochet. Now I know that the next stitches are going to be the back loop only half double crochet stitches for our sleeve. And we're just going to do this all the way down. At the end of this row, chain 2 and turn, and since we're beginning with the half double crochet row, we're going to do 1 regular half double crochet into that very first stitch, and then do those back loop only half double crochet stitches up until we reach the single crochet or slip stitch row for our cuff. So we're going to keep going all the way down until I reach the stitch marker. The stitch marker really helps, especially in the first few rows when it's kind of harder to see. When we reach a stitch marker, we're going to slip stitch down that row. When we reach the end of the row, chain 1, and into the very first stitch we're going to place a single crochet. So the very first stitch is either going to be a single crochet if you end at the cuff, or a half double crochet if you end at the body of the sleeve. We're going to repeat all these steps for a second sleeve, so at the end you should have 2 sleeves that look identical. Now we're ready to start seaming up all of these panels together, so we're going to grab our back panel and our 2 front panels to begin. So once again, let's orient these panels. Look at the ribbing. You can see that the little crosses are faced upwards, or they kind of look like little hearts. So I want to orient my front panels facing up, making sure that the ribbing is facing the right way, which means that since the back panel is right side down, the wrong side should be facing up towards you, so that ribbing should actually be facing down. So I orient my panels like this first, and then I flip everything over because we want everything to be wrong side out when we do the seaming, so that the seam is inside the sweater and not facing outward. So now that I'm ready to seam, look at my back panel. The ribbing is actually facing up because this is inside out. And then for the front panel, the ribbing is facing downward. So I know that this is oriented correctly. You also want to make sure that that decreased portion is facing inward or toward the midline of the sweater. To begin seaming, we're going to find the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel and place our hook through both panels and pull a slip knot through. And then we're going to chain up 1. Now we're going to go down by placing our hook through both stitches on both panels, and there's no clear stitch to go into, just try to make these stitches as even as possible. And we're going to make single crochets all the way down. Make sure that you end at the end of this front panel and that you don't accidentally keep going. So as you can see here, I finished this first panel, I chain 1, cut the yarn, and now I'm going to work on seaming this other front panel to the back panel. We're going to repeat those same steps to seam that front panel to the back side. Now we're ready to seam up the sides of our sweater and attach our sleeves and close up our sleeves at the same time. As you can see here, I've already done that so you could see what it looks like. To begin seaming up, we're going to align the side panel of the front panel and the back panel, and we're going to hold them together like so. So this is the side of our sweater. Now I'm just going to figure out where I need to stop seaming before I need to start working on the sleeve. So I'm folding my sleeve inside out. Remember, everything is inside out right now because we want the seams to be facing inside the sweater. I'm just going to fold the sleeve in half. So I'm aligning the folded edge along the top side of the sweater where we just seamed up that front panel to the back panel. And I'm figuring out where I need to stop before I need to start seaming up the sleeve, because if I keep going down, this is just going to close up the entire sweater without leaving room for the sleeve. So now that I know where I need to stop, I'm going to place my hook into the bottom corner stitch of the front panel and the bottom corner stitch of the back panel, making sure to go through both loops. I'm going to pull a slip knot through and chain 1. And then I'm going to go into the stitches on both panels and do single crochets. Here we have clear stitches to go into, so you're just going to go into both stitches on both panels and don't work all the way up. Remember, you want to stop until around where the sleeve needs to be seamed to the sweater. So for me, that was around here. Now I'm ready to attach this sleeve to the sweater. So I'm going to pick up my hook where I left off, and I'm going to find that corner stitch of the sleeve. And I'm placing my hook through the corner stitch, and I'm going to take my yarn and do a slip stitch, so I attach this first stitch of the sleeve to the body of our sweater. Now before I begin seaming, I'm going to sandwich this top panel with this one layer of the sleeve. Make sure it's one layer of the sleeve and you're not accidentally going through both layers of the sleeve. So you see I'm holding the one front panel, not holding the back panel too, just the front panel, and putting my hook through one of the stitches in the front panel and one stitch on the sleeve. The sleeve has no clear stitch to go into, so try to make it as even as possible. And we're just going to seam this by single crocheting down. So you're going to single crochet all the way down, and I'll show you what it looks like when we flip this over and start seaming the other side of the sleeve to the body of the sweater. So I made it to the shoulder point. I'm carefully turning my work over. Once this work is turned over, now we're seaming up the back side of the sleeve to the back of the sweater. So we're just doing this by once again placing our hook through the back panel and then through the panel on the sleeve and single crocheting all the way down. To help me do this, I'm going to once again sandwich these two panels together so it's a little bit easier. We're going to single crochet down to the end. Once we reach the end, I'm going to find that very first stitch on the body of the sleeve. This is going down towards the cuff, and I'm going to slip stitch into that very first stitch. I do this so it doesn't create an awkward gap or hole at the armpit area. Now I'm going to align and sandwich this sleeve together and slip stitch into the very first stitch on the top side of that sleeve. So we slip stitch into the bottom half. Now we're going into the top half and slip stitching once again to avoid an awkward gap. Now I'm going to go into both stitches on both sides of the sleeve and single crochet all the way down to the cuff, and this is going to completely close up our sleeve. So we single crochet it all the way around and we're going down to the cuff. At the end, you can chain one and cut the yarn. We're going to work now on cleaning up the perimeter of the bottom of our sweater, and once we get to the corner, we're going to start our scallops. This is facing inside out. I'm placing my hook into the corner stitch and pulling a slip knot through. Now I'm going to chain one and turn my work. When I turn my work, it should now be right side up. Once again, this is the bottom of our sweater. We're placing single crochets along the entire perimeter until we reach the other side. And we're going to make sure that these single crochets are evenly spaced out since there's no clear stitch to go into. When you finish that final single crochet, it should lead you right back to the front panel. I just finished my last single crochet, so I'm at the bottom of the front panel. And now I have my work turned to the side. I'm going to chain up one, and I'm going to place one single crochet into that very first stitch at the bottom of the front panel. I'm skipping 2 stitches, and into that third stitch I'm going to place 5 double crochets for a scallop or shell stitch. So here are my 5 double crochets. And you can kind of play around with how you do this pattern. You can skip 3 stitches and go into the 4th stitch. You can skip 1 stitch. It kind of depends on how spaced out you want your scallops to be and how you want to look. Once again, I'm skipping 2 stitches and single crocheting into the 3rd stitch. Now you're going to repeat the pattern. So I'm skipping 2 stitches into the 3rd stitch, a scallop stitch, skip 2 stitches into the 3rd stitch, a single crochet, and I'm doing this around the entire perimeter of my sweater. You just want to make sure also that when you start doing the scallops on the other front panel on the other side, that you have the same amount of scallops in the same areas so that it mirrors the other side and looks even. So in order to do that, you might have to play around with the other side and how spaced out you make your scallops. If it makes it easier, you can also count up how many stitches you have for the perimeter of the sweater and kind of do a little bit of math and figure out how many scallops can fit and how spaced out you need to make them in order to make the same amount of scallops on both front panels. I just kind of eyeballed it and adjusted where necessary in order to make sure that the scallops ended up in the same places for both sides of the panels for the front panels. Once you weave in all of your loose end, you're essentially done with your sweater. So all of these following steps are now going to be optional. I'm going to be adding this red crochet heart. I'll be linking the tutorial above for how I made this heart. And I just used a darning needle and some yarn to secure it to the sweater. I also added 2 embroidered roses to one of the sleeves of the sweater. However, you can decorate this however you'd like. You can add as many hearts or roses as you'd like, or you can leave it without any of these little decorative details. This is the embroidered rose I added to the sleeve. I'm going to be linking a short tutorial that I made on how I embroidered this very easy rose. I think it adds a really nice finishing touch, and you can actually decorate the entire sweater in these roses if you'd like, but I only added 2. Now, to close off the sweater, we have a couple of different options. So option 1 is to pull a slip knot through the inside of the sweater and make a long chain on both of the front panels. So you're making 2 long cords that you can use to tie off the front of the sweater closed, or you can do what I did. So I sewed a button into the inside of one of the panels, and then I made a little chain like so, a short chain, big enough that the button can loop inside this chain. This is all on the inside of the sweater, so it's hidden. And then I slip stitch this chain to the base of the chain itself, so it creates a little loop. Then I use that loop to just pull the button through and close it from the inside, so it's kind of hidden. You can also add a button on the outside or tie the front part off with ribbon itself or leave it the way it is. Okay guys, and here's the final product of our chunky Valentine's Day cardigan. I absolutely love the way this came out. It was such a fun weekend project. If you guys try this tutorial out, let me know in the comments below, or head over to Instagram and send me a picture or a video. I love it when you guys show me your creations. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more crochet tutorials and patterns. Bye everyone!